All right, now that we have learned about defining a function and calling a function and why it is useful, right? But this function was a static function. Okay, there is nothing dynamic is going on here, right? You don't have to always greet someone, right? The function can do anything. It should be able to do like a dynamic task, right? Dynamic things. Now, since this is a static function, we hardly write this kind of functions, because anything that we write in a real life projects, we mostly write the dynamic functions, the functions that can do or that can calculate or that can generate something. Okay, so in this video, let's try to understand how to make the functions dynamic. Okay, so to make the functions dynamic, remember three things: one, parameters; two, arguments; and three, return values. Okay, parameters, arguments, and return values. Okay, I'll properly explain you what are these three things and how to use them and everything. So by the end of this video, you will understand each and everything about the dynamic functions. Okay, so for now, let's comment it out and let's take another example. Let's say we want to add two numbers. Okay, we want to add two numbers. So what we can do is we can create a function now, right? Add function. So I have just defined this function and we want to add something here, right? So add a and b, right? So for example, I will take the parameters here, a comma b. Okay, a comma b. So this a is the input. Technically we call it parameter. Okay, you can pass any number of parameters, not only two. Right now I have passed only a and b. If you want to pass 10 parameters, you can do that also. Okay, so for simplicity, I'm using a and b here. So this is the input. Now you see, we have not defined anything. There is nothing called a and b, right? I'm simply writing a and b blindly. And what I'll do is I will say sum is equal to a plus b. Sum is equal to a plus b, right? So now what I'm doing here, I'm adding a plus b and storing the actual value, storing the result inside a variable called sum. Okay, and each function should return something, right? So it makes the calculation and it gives something as a result, right? So that's what we call return. Return what? Return the result. Here, what is the result? Result is nothing but the sum, right? Okay, now you might be wondering what is a and b here and what is it, which number is it going to calculate, right? So this one is parameters and this is the return value, and now we want to pass the arguments. So in order for this function to run, as you know, we need to call the function, right? How to call the function? Simply write add, right? Simply write add and open close parenthesis. Now we want to pass the value while calling the function. Okay, so the value will be 4,5. Okay, 4,5. So now what this will do is this will actually take this 4 and 5 and replace it with the a and b. Okay, we call it positional arguments. I'll come to that part later, but this a will be replaced with this 4 and this b will be replaced with this 5. Now the value of a is 4, the value of b is 5. Now what this will do, a plus b is sum, right? It will be 9 and it is returning something, right? Okay, so now let's save the file and let's see if we can see something in the terminal, and we can't see anything here. That's because we are not printing anything here, right? So this is returning the sum. Okay, the function is being called here. The value of the function or the return value of the function is coming here. The sum is coming here. Now if you want to say result is equal to add 4,5. Now whatever this one is calculating will be stored here because it is returning something. Okay, so now let's just print the result and again run it, and you see 9. Okay, you understand? So now if I change to 10,20 and the function will be same, right? So now you see 30. We're not doing anything here, we are only changing the values. this function is dynamically working, right? So you don't have to write the code for adding 4 and 5 again, adding 10 and 20 again. If you want to add 100 plus 200, you don't have to write the code again and again, only change the arguments. Okay, so here 100 and this is 200, and when you run it you get 300, right? So this is actually a dynamic function. Now one very important thing you have to remember here in this part of code, what is parameter, what is argument, and what is the return value, right? So most people get confused what is parameter and what is argument. Some people, they call it, this one is parameter, this one is argument, and sometimes it happens for the beginners, like they don't understand what exactly is parameters and what is arguments. So whatever input that you accept while defining a function is called parameter. I should write like this. This is parameter. Okay, these two inputs you are accepting here while defining the function is called parameter. The actual value are called arguments. These 100 and 200 are actual values, right? So these are arguments. Okay, now this is return values. Okay, so after performing some calculation or after building some logic, it has to return something, right? It has to say something like, I've done this task and here's the result, right? So that thing will be done by this return statement. Okay, return is a keyword. All right, so that will then be stored, that can be stored inside any kind of variables, okay, based on the data type that you see here. All right, so that's about the dynamic functions. Okay, now let's quickly take one more example. Let's define a function greet again. Okay, previously we were like greeting one very simple static sentence, right? Hello, welcome to Python basics course. Now let's say we have a dynamic function that is greeting the person by his name, right? For example, hello, good morning Ratan, hello, good morning John, good morning Joe, or something, right? So here the name is dynamic, right? So now we have created a function greet, and this greet is accepting the name, because the task of this greet function is to greet someone by their name, right? So by seeing the task itself, we can know that this function only needs name, right? So this one needed two parameters a and b, because the role of this function is to add two numbers, right? So that's how you decide whether to take one parameter, two parameter, three parameters, or something like that. This one only needs name. Now I'll say print. Okay, you remember, we have a f string, right? So because we want to add hello to some name, right? I'll say hello, comma, good morning, pass the name. Okay, good morning, pass the name. All right, so now we have created the function, we have defined the function. Now we want to call it. Let's call this function. So just calling the function, what happens if you don't pass the argument? We have taken the parameters, right? So this function is expecting some value. Okay, so that's why it is taking the parameter, right? But what happens if I don't pass anything while calling the function? Let me clear it up and okay, run it. And you see, until this line of code it ran properly, but you see we have got the type error. Greet is missing one required positional argument, name. Okay, so it is saying you cannot call this greet function without the required positional argument. Now what does it mean by required positional argument? What is this required? So this required means this name must be passed in order to run this function. Okay, can we make it optional? Yes. See, by reading this line of error, we see that it is saying it is required. When there is required, there must be some way to make it optional, right? So yes, we can do optional. How to do it optional? If you say name is equal to guest, if you say name is equal to guest, what will happen? Even if you don't pass anything, any arguments to this greet function, it is still going to print the guest here, good morning guest. Let's try again. and you see hello, good morning, guest. Now what if I pass the name is equal to Ratan? Name is equal to Ratan. So now what it will do, it will just print good morning Ratan. Okay, good morning Ratan. The priority goes to this calling the function. Okay, whatever you pass here is the first priority. If you don't pass anything, if you don't pass the name here while calling the function, we already have the default value here. Okay, name guest. So that's how you make the functions dynamic.